Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to break down a really clever way software gets built. It's called the prototype model. And trust me, it's a method designed to solve a problem that is ridiculously common and super costly in the tech world.
So let's start with a feeling I'm sure you've had. You've got this brilliant, totally clear idea in your head. You explain it, you think, perfectly. And then what you get back is just something else entirely. It's that super frustrating moment, right? That lost in translation feeling.
Okay, but in the world of software development, this isn't just a little annoyance. It's a full-blown crisis. This gap between the initial vision and the final reality, that's exactly where budgets get torched, deadlines fly by, and really promising projects, well, they just quietly go to die. All right, so let's get into it. The heart of the problem is this massive communication gap. See, clients often have a brilliant concept, but they can't possibly map out every single little detail right from the start. They operate on that classic, and let's be honest, terrifying phrase, "I'll know it when I see it." And if you're working with a fixed budget and timeline, those words can send a shiver down your spine. And here's the thing, a 100-page document, no matter how detailed, just can't capture the feel of an application, How does it actually flow? Is it intuitive to use? So developers are left trying to make their best guess based on these static specs. And this, of course, often leads to incredibly expensive and time-consuming rework down the line when the client finally sees the product and says those dreaded words, "Yeah, that's not what I meant."
So what's the solution? It's actually pretty simple when you think about it. You wouldn't build a whole car from scratch without letting the buyer take it for a spin first, would you? Of course not. You offer a test drive. And that simple, powerful idea is the absolute core of the prototype model.
So what is it exactly? Well, the whole goal is to build a working sketch of the software. It is absolutely not the final product. Its entire job is just to be a conversation starter. Something real and tangible that users can actually click on, touch, and react to, so they can finally have that aha moment and say, "Oh, this is what I actually want." Here's another great way to think about it. You'd never, ever finance a full-blown blockbuster movie without seeing a trailer or some kind of proof of concept first, right? Well, a prototype does the exact same thing for software. It shows the promise, the look, the feel. It gets everyone excited and completely on the same page before that huge investment begins. Okay, so how does this actually work in the real world? The engine that drives the prototype model isn't just one single event. Nope, it's a constant, repeating cycle of feedback and refinement. This is definitely not a one-and-done kind of deal. What you have is this rapid feedback loop. You design a little, you build a little, you get feedback from the user, and then you refine it. And you just spin through this cycle over and over and over. With each rotation, the prototype gets closer and closer to what the user really wants until you finally hit that magic moment where they go, "Yes, that's it, build that."
All right, so it turns out not all prototypes are created equal. First up, you've got the throwaway model. Seriously, think of this as a quick and dirty, disposable sketch. You build it super fast, maybe even with different tools, all to answer one big, risky question, like, do people even get this concept? And once you have your answer, you literally throw the code away and start fresh. It's perfect for those really high uncertainty projects where you just need to learn fast before you commit to anything big.
Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have the evolutionary prototype. With this one, you build the initial version on a really solid foundation because you know it's eventually going to become the final product. So with each feedback cycle, you're not just learning, you're actually adding and refining features. This prototype literally grows up to be the real system. This is what you'd use when the main ideas are pretty clear, but you really need to polish that user experience over time. But what if your project is just massive? That's where the incremental model is a lifesaver. Instead of trying to build one giant prototype, you break the system into smaller, manageable chunks. You build a separate prototype for each part, say one for user profiles, another for the shopping cart, and a third for the search function. Once each little piece is perfected and gets the thumbs up, you start connecting them all together, like puzzle pieces. This is just ideal for those huge, complex applications where trying to do everything at once would be totally overwhelming. And finally, we have extreme prototyping. This one is huge in the world of web apps. It's basically a layered approach. First, you prototype the screens, what the user actually sees. Then, you add the basic logic, what happens when you click this button or that link. And finally, you hook it all up to the behind-the-scenes services that handle all the data and the really complex stuff. So this all sounds pretty amazing, right? But and there's always a but, it is not a silver bullet. Just like any tool, the prototype model has some incredible strengths, but it also has some very real pitfalls you absolutely have to watch out for. The biggest win here? It's clarity, plain and simple. You almost completely get rid of the risk of building the wrong thing, because your users are basically co-pilots right from day one. They get a real sense of ownership, and you catch those big, glaring design flaws when they're cheap and easy to fix, not, 6 months and $100,000 down the road.
So, what's the catch? Because there's always a catch. Well, for one, when users see a working model, they get excited, and then they start asking for more and more features. That's what we call scope creep. They also might see a really polished-looking design and not realize it's basically just a facade, leading them to ask that one dreaded question. So, it's done, right? Yeah. Managing those expectations is absolutely critical.
And really, these pros and cons perfectly highlight the huge difference between prototyping and that old-school waterfall model. See, waterfall is rigid. It's like a building blueprint. You design everything perfectly up front, and then you just build it, step by step, no changes. Prototyping, on the other hand, is flexible. It assumes things are going to change. It's not a blueprint, it's a conversation. Okay, so this brings up the big question. When should you actually reach for this tool? The key is really knowing which kinds of jobs the prototype model is built for.
It's really the perfect choice when the requirements are kind of foggy, or when the success of your project completely lives or dies by the user experience. If you're building something brand new, something experimental, or you absolutely need to get that customer buy-in early on, prototyping is going to be your best friend.
And honestly, you see this stuff everywhere. Just think about the apps on your phone, the websites you shop on, or your favorite social media platforms. For all of these things, the look, the feel, the flow, it's everything. Success is all about how intuitive and engaging that experience is, which is exactly what prototyping is designed to get right.
And at the end of the day, that's really what it all comes down to. The prototype model isn't just some technical development process. It's a communication tool. It builds this solid, essential bridge between the mind of the user and the hands of the developer, making sure the right thing gets built right from the very start.
So, that leaves us with a final question for you to think about. If you were building something brand new, from scratch, what would be the single most important, most risky uncertainty that you would have to resolve with a prototype? What's that one core idea you would absolutely need to test drive with your users before you dared to commit to the full build?